I put it down. I'm going to say it from the way that I would say it in class. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm cold. I haven't eaten all night. I fall asleep. But if the fort was designed the right way, they wouldn't have got over so easy. I kept telling them to build the walls higher, but they did it. And in New England winters, we have a lot of snow. So I know Minister Williams is going to blame me and say that I'm unfaithful, but I'm not. I think this was a test of God, that He put this out there for us. And this will make us stronger New Englanders. As Cotton Mather said, it's a test. And at the end, we will come through this and we will be stronger. And it will make us a stronger New England and make us a great state of a great country of Massachusetts.
Hear, hear. Nice way to deflect any criticism from yourself.
Pass the buck.
Do we have anybody coming up from Hadley to defend the town?
That would be me.
Ah.
Didn't say, yeah, okay. I was roused from bed at early dawn by a great clamoring at my front door, shouting and pounding. I thought the native enemies had fallen upon us, but then I discerned the voice of my neighbor, Jack Riley, in the mayhem. With the front door now open, I saw several neighbors pointing to the north where a faint orange glow on the horizon was visible. An attack was happening in the village of Deerfield. Our vulnerable neighbors needed our help. Soon our numbers swelled to 40. We quickly saddled horses and rode north swiftly. The night was cold, with winter on its way. Snow had already fallen, so the passage was difficult. We approached the southern part of town. It became obvious that the worst of the attack was in the north because this first area was still undamaged. A well-fortified house stood to our right. We called out to see if any of the inhabitants were alive, and by God's good grace, 15 of Deerfield men were inside. Swiftly charging free of their confines with our reinforcements, we raced north and entered at one gate. To our surprise, the enemy was, at that very moment, fleeing out the gate at the top. We couldn't contain ourselves. With as much new energy as we could muster, we laid chase to the heathens. They dropped much of their plunder in their surprise. We laid chase. Despite the cold, I became hot with energy and fury, trying to reach these beasts that killed my neighbors. I pulled off my coat to lighten my load. I finally reached the stragglers at the end of the line. I shot 2 men in the back and watched them fall. I saw women, men, and children a half-mile ahead being pulled along fiercely by the enemy. The dead bodies were being trampled by enemy and friend alike in our haste to kill and save. The river ahead, I saw bloody captives waiting on the other side. I was choking with lack of air. And then what do I see? More enemy gathering on the banks, fresh and waiting, firing and firing on us. We were now the attacked, not the pursuers. Running as fast as we could, some fall, many wounded. Finally, the fort is near. The sight that met our eyes as we stopped running was red. The smell of blood and char burned my nostrils. That's as far as I got.
That's terrific. The image of what you'd see across the river and the people is very powerful. Thank you. Who's left? Who do we have?
Miss Caitlin, Mrs. Caitlin.
Oh, Mrs. Caitlin. Yeah, wow. A heroine of sorts, if there are heroines. I'm not sure there are any heroes in this story.
It was early morning before the sun had risen when I was startled by a faint gunshot. My husband was still asleep with a look of distant dreams until I woke him. He was startled and gave me a disapproving look at my decision until we heard the sounds of wood and glass breaking. I had never seen fear and despair on a man's face as I did that morning. My husband rushed to his clothes, neatly laid on the chair from the night before. He quickly demanded I gather our 7 children, already awake and frightened, and head to the cellar. As I climbed out of bed, we both froze in time, as if the world was moving around us and we didn't have the power to move a muscle. 2 Indians knocked down our doors and rushed towards the children. My very eyes were filled with unforeseen images that are hard to recount. I saw as a savage with the devil's tool kill 2 of my children in a matter of seconds. As I gasped, I tasted the sweat that flew off the savage as he prepared to do the same to my youngest. The rest I failed to remember. As I awoke from my trance, I realized I was being dragged in the frigid snow with my bedclothes clinging to my weak and injured body. I looked around and saw bodies on the ground that belonged to faces I once knew, but no longer recognized. I smelled the burning flesh of the hogs, or what I thought were hogs. Now I can only imagine it was the smell of my loving friends. I searched the sky for signs of the Lord to guide me to a better place, but all I saw were the dark clouds blocking the rising sun, my light. My thoughts were then interrupted by the sound of children crying. It quickly reminded me of the images I chose never to see again. I looked behind me in hopes to see my husband, but saw nothing except savages running in the snow, causing clouds of white and a sea of red. We approached a neighbor's home that my thoughts do not let me remember who it belonged to. As we entered, a young man, French I presume, as he was treated with care, was brought in. He was severely injured, wounded, and asked for some water. As a form of instinct, I quickly grabbed a cup from the cupboard, a small English teacup with beautiful pink flowers and a gold rim, and filled it with water from the bucket nearby. As I approached the man, one of my fellow neighbors frowned at me and whispered, "How could you do that for your enemy?" I responded as if the Lord had entered my body. "If thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him water to drink." I stepped back and saw as the other captives looked at me with disgust. The French and the savages did something unexpected to us all. They left, leaving me behind alone. I have yet to understand the abandonment and wish they had allowed me to join my children and leave this land of evil.